Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar. And what's the most important part of a video game? No, not the microtrans. Stop it, Blizzard! Ladies and gentlemen, no. The most important part of a video game is having good gameplay. How do you develop good gameplay? By having an amazing video game engine. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, game engines are some of the most important things when it comes to designing a video game. Because by all definitions of the word, the engine is what powers your graphics, your AI, your gameplay, your sound, and all those lovely little microtransactions that every AAA publisher loves to put in. Ladies and gentlemen, there's plenty of amazing video game engines out there. For instance, Frostbite, where Mirror's Edge Catalyst, Battlefield, Mass Effect Andromeda, a ton of EA games are built upon, actually shines. Absolutely beautiful looking game engine. There is game engines like Rage, Rockstar's advanced game engine, that render cities and environments like no tomorrow. And then there's engines like RE Engine, which renders out some of the best looking Resident Evil remakes you'll ever see. See, engines come and go, and they take millions of dollars to develop, and many years. Really, this is only in the realm of big companies and big publishers that have tons of time and money that they can actually dump into projects and ventures like this. So, of course, you may understand that, what if you're not one of those game publishers? What if I'm an indie guy? Well, then you're probably going to have to start using game engines that are already done and ready to go. Game engines made by people who only really make game engines. Now, of course, you're pretty much spoiled for choice. Now, of course, you've got CryEngine, which if you don't know belongs to the amazing Crysis franchise. This game engine is probably one of the best looking engines I've seen. Not only is it great, but they've actually managed to get ray tracing running on a pure software level, to the point where they were even able to get it running, believe it or not, on last generation game consoles. Kind of a tall order. Of course, you've also got game engines like Unreal Engine 5. For those of you who don't remember Unreal Engine 5, remember back to when we played the Matrix demo? Well, that amazing city was rendered on that amazing console by this amazing game engine. Epic basically makes millions of dollars every year through their storefront and Fortnite, and that goes right into funneling one of the biggest AAA game engines you'll ever find. Then, of course, you've also got something intuitive like Godot Engine. But of course, the story here comes all the way to Unity Engine. Now, you might actually think of the word Unity and kind of have a bad taste in your mouth, and that's because if you've been on Steam as long as I have, you'll know that a fuck ton of shovelware games are made on the Unity Engine. Thank God for absolutely minimal licensing fees and an amazing asset store for all the kiddies to rip from, just to cause that. But of course, for every indie like crapfest that exists on Steam, there's amazing games like Valheim, like Disco Elysium, like V Rising, like Cuphead, like Genshin Impact, that all run on Unity Engine. See, Unity is not a bad engine by any stretch of the imagination. It seems like the leadership for Unity is wanting to turn it into a downward ship at this point. I haven't seen a company make decisions like this since Artesian, and let's get right into it. So number one starts off with the layoffs. Now, layoffs are a common thing, unfortunately, in today's economy, especially with record high inflation and the fact that we're still in a pandemic. So of course, you can imagine that for companies, usually the mid-tier to small-tier businesses are the ones that get hit the hardest. But for a company like Unity, they were actually showcased lately in their SEC 10K forms to actually be culling 4% of its workforce, which basically equates to around 200 or maybe slightly more than 200 people. As part of a continued planning process, where we regularly assess our resourcing levels against our company's priorities, we decided to realign some of our resources to better drive focus and support our long-term growth. This results in some hard decisions that impacted approximately 4% of all Unity workforce. We are grateful for the contributions for those leaving Unity, and we are supporting them through this difficult transition. Weeks after the CEO of Unity, John Riccitello, if you're actually getting deja vu with that name, this person was once former CEO of Electronic Arts, the biggest anus in video gaming to this day. Of course, John Riccitello basically, while he is comfortable with firing these people after telling them, we're not really anticipating any layoffs, mostly because you don't want your workforce to plan ahead or rebel in some capacity. Yes, the same CEO's pay gap actually went massively high. 2020, was the year where John Riccitello, CEO of Unity, actually jumped their CEO pay to 160% where it originally was, to $22 million per year. So it's comfortable firing over 200 of your employees, but then making $22 million a year? Just basic American big business things. Am I right, boys, or am I right? John Riccitiello, Chief Executive Officer, received $22 million in total, which 51% of that was $11 million in stock awards. Then he received $484,000 in non-equity incentive plans and $9.9 million in options awards, as well as, on top of that, the extra little cream, $360,000 in salary. God, isn't it great to be at the top end of the ladder? Fuck your employees, am I right? God damn. Now, don't get me wrong, layoffs happen a lot, but when it comes to a small mid-tier company, when they lay off their employees, like imagine if Artesian Builds, all right, for all the sinful things that they've done, had to lay off 50 of their employees. Typically, I found it in my experience when you hire people that work from big corporate structures who come down, typically try to cull the fat as much as they can. They want to make a ship that resembles what they came from. But of course, in this situation, Unity, being a pretty massive company in its own right, decided to fire those same employees, but at the same time increase the compensation that high for someone like John Riccitiello. It's this kind of stuff that you can imagine burns people. Now, of course, you might be wondering, what kind of people did they fire for that long-term growth? Well, this takes us down a little bit of a side rabbit hole, if you will. Unity, being a game engine, kind of is in the middle of the amazing jaw-dropping visuals you see in Unreal and the intuitiveness of Godot. It's somewhere in the middle of that where it hasn't achieved both of those goals. It's kind of just in there. And the fact that Unity has been used by asset flippers this much, and by people who basically want to take advantage of their massive asset store, just exists with its user base, in that capacity. Now, of course, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of games, like I mentioned earlier, that use this game engine to produce some really awesome titles. But Unity really needs to streamline its development and make things better for the average game developer, which is their target audience. Remember, Unity's target audience is not gamers, it's game developers. If they actually wanted to target gamers, they could have been like CryEngine, creating amazing game franchises like Crysis. They could have been like Unreal Engine, creating Fortnite, which is the absolute moneymaker that it is, and a pretty decent battle royale in its own right. They could have been like plenty of these game, engine manufacturers who actually have developed a successful game as a showpiece and a moneymaker for their firm. Of course, in Unity's case, they haven't done that. They tried to do that with something known as Gigaya, which is an in-development playable sample game we're creating to inspire your creativity. You want to know how cool this is for a second? Let me just show you some gameplay footage. Unity basically sat down and developed a little sample video game. And by sample video game, it's a game that's a live development, meaning that as they develop their engine, they develop this cool-looking game. This game itself is just some standard little platformer, something that showcases the engine's visual front and shows a lot of those budding game developers how they can use these development techniques to better their own games. It's one of the coolest pieces of learning tech that they ever could have done. Unfortunately, those 200 plus layoffs, included the entire production team to a cool project like this. Remember, they wanted a long-term strategy. How the fuck is it long-term thinking when you're firing the people that are literally bettering your own game engine? The thing that puts you on the map, if you will? Yeah, if you look down over here, they still to this day will show the productions team. From what I've understood, from all I know, every single one of these people that have designed this have all lost their job. They're all basically out of Unity as far as I understand. Maybe some of them got rehired to a different project, but this whole thing basically stopped. After 4 months of showing a project like this, they fucking canned it to the side. But of course, that knife twists a little deep, but it doesn't twist hard enough until you hear the next phase of this so-called expansion. So-called, Unity Gate, if you will. According to Kotaku's investigation and PC Gamer, they said literally those who lost jobs this week were asked by their bosses to suddenly log into a video call with no advance notice of what the call was about. But for some of these calls, a member of Unity's Human Resources department also logged into the meeting. So in those cases, it's usually pretty clear that you're getting fired, okay? That's pretty much what it is. Unity is continuing to pay those who've been laid off for a month, and offering a further month of severance and Cobra Health coverage. So they're not completely throwing you in the dark. They're giving you some money to at least get up and set, okay? Which is, I guess, better than nothing. I hope a lot of the people involved in this end up getting a job in different game sectors, different departments, and of course, in different companies that respect them a little bit better. According to Unity, they have merged with a company known as ironSource, an Israeli-based ad company, if you will, right? So, of course, the world's leading platform for creating, operating interactive real-time 3D content, and ironSource, a leading business platform that empowers mobile content creators to turn their apps into scalable, successful businesses, announced today that they've entered into a definitive agreement under which ironSource will merge into a wholly owned subsidiary of Unity. So ironSource is getting absorbed by Unity in this case, an all-stock deal. So what is ironSource, if you will? Okay, ironSource has a pretty shitty history. But of course, to understand and give you the whole context of it, they're basically, again, literally designed to further monetization onto the app marketplace of whole, right? So if you're a mobile app developer, these are the people, and from all I've heard, they are actually industry leading in terms of monetizing and creating some of the best ad networks, if you will. So the reason why Unity is getting them is if you've ever used the Unity game development tool, you'll know that they have their own ad frameworks as well. It's not exactly the best in class, so I assume them buying and merging with this company, which is, by the way, Unity, if you looked at their stock price, is absolutely tanking at the moment. Now, I don't even consider this too bad because $32 is very undervalued for a company like Unity, which is, from what I understand, the only direct competition to something as massive as Unreal. Of course, the company they did absorb, ironSource, actually was raking mega. Okay, I think it's valued somewhere to like 4.4 billion US dollars. Fucking massive indeed. The monetization money that you can make, the monetization rabbit hole, the monetization like world, if you will, for apps is a huge business, and this shows. But of course, the real shady side of it is ironSource is also known to be a former malware bundler, if you will. They've gotten that sort of designation, if you will. And it's sort of a weird designation, and I kind of want to get into it a little bit more. I want to deep dive into it. So you might be wondering, isn't it kind of shady that one of the world's biggest game engines is now partnering with somebody that's basically been smeared all over the internet as a malware bundler? Mudahar, how am I supposed to trust a software how am I supposed to trust any of this software on my computer now that they've partnered with somebody that's so shady? Well, to get this whole story, ladies and gentlemen, ironSource actually released something all the way back in 2016 known as Install Core, okay? Now, Install Core is not malware. Malware itself is a catch-all term. Think of this as more of adware, okay? Or something known as a PUP, or a potentially unwanted program, if you will. A PUA, which is not a pickup artist, it's potentially unwanted applications. What this basically means is Install Core, for those of you who don't know, is basically a tool that basically allowed you to create third-party installers for popular applications. Now, to understand, one of Microsoft's chief, I guess you could say, economists for web experience, strategy, and policy all the way up to this very day, Ben Edelman, actually made a closer examination onto what he meant by this on this entire situation with Install Core. Now, ironSource is a company that made Install Core back in the days of 2016, 2015, where they ended up getting blacklisted literally by actual antivirus software, typically Microsoft's Threat Intelligence and various others in the game, into actually being tagged as a potentially unwanted application, a PUP, adware, if you will. This was literally blocked by Microsoft. They were blacklisted by MS as a whole. So, of course, in this case, what they did was basically bundle in software, like popular software, in this case, like Google Chrome. And they basically bundled it in their installer package, which, if you've ever downloaded anything third-party off the internet, to understand what I mean is, have you ever really tried to download a web browser for free, right? Typically, what you would do is you'd open up a new tab like I'm doing right now. You'd go to google.com or your web browser or your web search of choice. You would go into it and you would type in Google Chrome download. So as you do Google Chrome download, you start to notice how they have ads at the top here. Now, of course, anytime you're on Google, any search engine, ignore the fucking ads, okay? These are bought and paid for, obviously. Now, of course, the first URL you see is chromeenterprise.google. Then you start to see google.ca. So that's actually a Google domain you'd be clicking on. Then you see www.info.com as an ad. Now, of course, this will throw you down into a rabbit hole that if you keep going down and clicking the wrong link, will just, like, for instance, gopher.com Chrome install. I hit on that, I go to gopher.com, okay? Of course, to understand what this basically means is, for old people, for me and you, who are more technologically savvy, we may look at that and go, that's pretty sussy-wussy. But for somebody that's old, they might happen to click on a different link. They might happen to click on something like www.freechromedownload.com. That URL is not owned by Google whatsoever, but it will show you a page that'll look deceptively close. In Ben's investigation into the entire thing, Ben, like many other researchers, showcased that the pages looked like this. So you see how it's Google Chrome, download free? To the average, like Andy, to the old person, they'll be like, oh shit, I'm downloading Google Chrome. That's what I wanted, and they'll click on that. They're not going to look at the fact that they're downloading from a URL known as downloadb.net, something shady as hell. And of course, what ironSource and a lot of these downloaders and installer tools were using deceptively hid that marketing at all. Of course, even the installer, you can see once you launch it, didn't have any signification. To the average person, this literally does look like the Google Chrome downloader. The only giveaway is the fact that it says, welcome to Download B, Download Manager. Where it gets really deceptive, however, is whenever you see an installer like this on a third-party website, you might be just there to click next, next, next a few times and immediately start using Chrome. The thing is, a lot of these third-party installers will give you Chrome. It won't deny that, but it'll always bundle some sort of weird add-on, whether that be a browser plugin, whether that be some third-party application you didn't want in the first place, that potentially unwanted program. That's the problem with these types of installers. Now, in the defense of ironSource, and I hate to be doing this defense, this was an open source tool from my understanding. You can actually do the same thing with other tools on the marketplace, free and open source tools that still exist, third-party installer creators. And of course, what people were doing, malicious individuals, where they were taking ironSource's toolset, they were basically creating these malicious, malware-ridden installers, spreading them all over the internet and infecting users' computers. It got so bad that their tool, their open source tool, got blacklisted by Microsoft and the other AV leaders in the market. So of course, what actually happened in this case was it wasn't necessarily ironSource that was spreading the malware like some of the bigger sites would lead you to believe, like PC Gamer and whatnot. It's a little clickbaity. What actually happened in this situation was they created a tool, malicious people used it for bad reasons, and of course, they ended up getting smeared in the process. It's not to say they were a clean company in any capacity. Oh, fuck no. Any company that's involved this hard in data gathering is a shady, sussy business. But of course, they decided to distance themselves away from their installer tool and decided to go full dick into the ad game, which is where they're at right now. So realistically, one of the things about this, and where the downfall of Unity really comes into after that whole history lesson, is looking at the direction of the company going forward. To say that Unity is going to die immediately today or tomorrow is incredibly hyperbolic. That's not a statement that anybody should make. Unity probably will rebound and probably will do pretty successfully. But the way that the CEO of the company and the way that these acquisitions appear to be, their focus is not so much creating an amazing game engine tool, not creating a great product that will attract every game developer to them, like honey and milk. No, their idea is to create a product that can design more mobile games and spread more monetization. That's what this acquisition was all about. That's what culling your entire game development branch was all about. That's what culling your game engine development branch was effectively all about. Because at the end of the day, John Riccitiello is more interested in trying to get people to fucking monetize their games. I mean, to this day, the CEO, John Riccitiello, again, I'm going to keep telling you this, calls mobile developers who don't prioritize monetization fucking idiots. This is a quote right here too. Ferrari and some of the other high-end car manufacturers still use clay and carving knives. Riccitiello said about the necessity of making monetization an early priority. Hey, John, Ferrari also doesn't sell cars like Toyota and Honda, okay? The people buying Ferraris are incredibly rare all the way throughout. Supercar manufacturers cater to, like, what, 2% of the market? 1% of the market that can afford millions of dollars of vehicles? Come on now, okay? Millions of dollars of a depreciating asset? This fucking out-of-touch boomer. It's a very small portion of the gaming industry that works that way. And some of these people are my favorite people in the world to fight with. They're the most beautiful and pure, brilliant people. Yeah, because they're not consumed with thoughts of battle passes and loot boxes and surprise mechanics every night. He says they're also some of the biggest fucking idiots. Of course, what John here means is when you're making mobile games, right? Mobile games are an incredibly saturated market. To stand out as a mobile game is way harder than standing out as a AAA title. Because when you're on the mobile platform, you are spoiled for choice as a gamer. Everything is free, everything is available, and frankly, when you got that much competition, the difference between somebody putting an hour of their time into your game versus 2 minutes is absolutely massive on the moneymaker. It can absolutely make or break your entire game. So of course, when John Riccitello invests in all these ad platforms and networks, it's mostly there to appear, at least to me, at least to the pessimist side of me, that they're more interested in trying to create monetization APIs, monetization frameworks for future mobile titles out there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, does that mean that this whole engine is dead? Is this engine going to die? Yes, this is a lot of bad news that we read. This whole shady transition of Unity into what they are becoming right now is kind of hard to watch. But of course, these situations take months to manifest. Look, this could be a play by Unity to be absolutely amazing for them years down the road. But for the game developers involved and the companies involved, I hear a completely different story from a lot of those people. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the weird sort of shady collapse, if you will, the shady sort of slip down into hell, if you will, for a game engine. It's a wild story indeed, a wild ride. But if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am